Hi there, it's Kathy, owner and creator at Sycamore and Cotton, and I'm so glad that you've landed on my channel. If you're new here, then welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, then welcome back. I'm so glad that all of you are here. This video is packed full of fall and Halloween projects, and it was so fun to do, and I really hope that you enjoy it and that you can draw inspiration from some of the things that you'll see here. And since there's no time to waste, let's get started. So for our first project, we are going to be using Rust-Oleum paint in the color Linen. It is a chalk paint. You've seen me use it several times before if you are a regular viewer. And here I'm just removing the price tags. I thrifted this pumpkin some time back. It's just a styrofoam pumpkin, the kind that you get at the dollar store or Dollar Tree. And I'm going to clean it up really well. I'm having to use some Windex to get the adhesive off of the stickers. So it did not want to come up and it wanted to leave behind some stickiness. So I cleaned that up really well and then got busy with the paint. You may notice that my surroundings are different from where I'm usually painting in my really cluttered basement workspace, garage workspace. I'm actually working on this day at the Emporium at 2120, which is where I have my booth, my first booth. I actually have two right now, and this is in downtown Middlesboro. We're located in the very most southeastern corner of Kentucky, and we border Virginia and Tennessee, so we're a tri-state area, and we are part of the Appalachian region. And one of the fun facts about Middlesboro is that we are built on a basin where a meteorite hit the earth thousands of years ago and created a basin. So we're located in the crater, the impact of this meteorite, and we are called Crater City for that reason. And we're one of just a few towns in North America that actually is built on a crater site. So look it up, it's really interesting, and it's kind of cool to be able to say that about my hometown. So this took 2 coats of paint. The first coat I brushed on, and the second coat I dabbed on with a dauber, a sponge dauber. Let those dry, and now I'm using Mod Podge to apply the designs from a 2-ply napkin, which you saw me separate earlier, the ply of the napkin, and I just tore out the designs piece by piece that I wanted to put on this pumpkin. I think that these blue and white designs look so pretty on pumpkins for the fall, and I love blue, blending it in with the traditional fall color of orange and rust and gold. I think it looks really nice with those colors. This is something that you can put out early while it's still summer and keep it out even through fall. I just work on this project piece by piece. When applying the napkin, I like to brush on a little bit of the Mod Podge and then press my napkin into that, slowly smoothing the napkin out to avoid any wrinkles, and then lift the napkin, apply more Mod Podge, press the napkin into that, and then just go along like that, piece by piece or little by little, and that really helps to control the wrinkles. When decoupaging with napkins, it's really important that you use just a minimum amount of your decoupage medium, whatever you happen to be using. I use Mod Podge, and you want to go very lightly with it or with whatever you're using, because if you get your napkin too wet, it's going to tear so easily. It's just pretty much going to disintegrate into the decoupage medium. So be very light-handed with it, and you shouldn't have any problems, although problems do occur and they're usually very easily fixed. So don't let that deter you. I didn't get to finish the pumpkins while I was at the Emporium, so I brought them home that evening, and the next day I pulled them out to finish working on them and was disappointed to see that this one, the taller one, had faded. There were pink areas all over it, and blue and white napkins typically fade on me or bleed on me, but this one had even turned pink in some sections that didn't actually have blue ink from the napkin. So I don't know if the brush drug it through that or what. And if you decoupage with napkins, or blue and white napkins especially, and you've ever had this problem, please let me know what you did to fix it. I decided to try spraying my next napkin that I plan on putting on a pumpkin that I hadn't finished, or hadn't even started rather. I sprayed it with a clear finish, a clear matte spray that I often use to seal my projects. And I just opened the napkin. I did not remove the ply. I left the 2-ply as it was, and I just spread the napkin out and sprayed it lightly with that clear gloss or clear spray, and it was actually a matte. And then I let that dry, and I did another light coat and let that dry before decoupaging it on this this pumpkin that you see, the larger pumpkin that you see here. And that did seem to work fairly well. I only had one area that bled just a little, and I'm thinking that could be a part of the napkin that just did not get enough of the clear matte spray on it. So I don't know yet. I'll have to keep trying. But please, again, if you know a trick to keeping this from happening, because at first I thought it was just the first napkins that I ever used that were blue and white, but now I'm finding that it happens with every blue and white napkin that I use, and that's the only ones that I've had trouble with. So if you could let me know what works for you, I would be so appreciative. So now I have applied step 1 of Pentart's Fine Line Crackle and let that dry on the 3 pieces that I have, and now I'm applying step 2, and then I will let that dry. Step 2 is thinner and tends to run if you put it on too heavily, so be very careful with that. After that has dried, the next step is to apply a dark wax, and I'm using DIY's black wax. And in using the Pentart Fine Line Crackle, you have to use solvent-based products. Well, this wax is not solvent-based, but I use a little bit of mineral spirits with it, and that's what that is in that little cup. So I dip my brush in the wax, then dip it in the cup of mineral spirits, and then apply it. And you can see how much it thins down that wax. And so far, this has worked for me in avoiding any of the gumminess that comes when you do apply water-based products on top of the Fine Line Crackle. I learned the hard way that when you use a water-based product on top of the Pentart Fine Line Crackle, that it will gum up on you, and that's not attractive and not something that anyone wants on their projects. So in order to avoid it, this mineral spirits has worked for me. Tell me what your favorite product is that is solvent-based that you use with Pentart's Fine Line Crackle, if you have used that product before. I really love the crackle that it gives. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So now it's time to do something about the stem. I decided to mold some aluminum foil around it so that I can shape it and give it a little bit more character. So this is really easy to do. You just wrap your piece of aluminum foil. If it's not big enough, you can just keep wrapping foil around it, which I do because there's a pretty big opening in that pumpkin, and originally the stem had some twine wrapped around it, and that kept it from going down into the opening of the pumpkin. So I'm wrapping foil around it to make it a little bit thicker there at the bottom. And then when I get that finished, I am going to decoupage a plain white napkin to it, because I'll be painting this and I don't want to be painting directly onto the foil. After the decoupage medium had dried, I painted the stem red. Red underneath your gold base or gold metallic paints seems to make the metallic shine better, and so I've started doing that. I have also used black. I've also red that you can use brown underneath your gold. I think you just do whatever's suitable for what you're doing and whatever you have on hand, because I have used black and it works. But I was using the rub and buff on the smaller stem, the one that came with that small pumpkin, and now I'm just drying that gold on that larger stem, and here is everything finished. Let me know how you like it. This next project is probably my favorite out of the entire video, and it is making little witches' hats to turn them into topiaries. So here I have just rolled up a piece of cardboard, and I don't want to make a point on it because I want to be able to bend the top of it like a witch's hat. So I left it larger there at the top rather than rolling it into a tighter cone. I also wanted to make sure that it was large enough around at the base. So I did that, and I just taped it together, and now I'm just drawing out a circle, just using that masking tape just to kind of give me a guide to go by, because I needed it larger than the masking tape. But I'm just cutting it out, and this is going to be a very rough cut. I will continue to trim it down as I go, but this is a very rudimentary witch's hat. If I had had a styrofoam cone, I would have used that, and I do have some of those, but I think they've already been moved to the new location for my studio, and I think I've mentioned that before, so you probably know about it. But I'm so excited to be getting out of our garage, but my husband's even more excited about that, so he can park his truck in the garage. But anyway, I didn't have any of those styrofoam cones that you see at the Dollar Tree for $1, so I made it out of this cardboard, and here I've just taken some aluminum foil to shape the top of the witch's hat, and I fit it onto the cone that I've made, and I'm trimming it down so that it will sit flat, and just making alterations and making it work as I go, because I didn't have a pattern. I only had this picture to go by. Are these not adorable? I just fell in love with them and had to make them. I'm making a hole in the center of what will be the brim of the hat, so that I can, number one, put the stick through that's going to be holding the topiary up, and number two, put some foam up in the hat to, one, make it more secure, and two, to put the stick into to make it stay in the hat. And now I had glued on the aluminum foil, just using regular, I think I used my Tight Bond, and I'm just shaping the aluminum foil around the cone. And now, just with that Quick and Thick, Tight Bond Quick and Thick, I put plenty down on the brim of the hat. That glue gun is not a good one. My good glue gun I've misplaced, so I pulled that one out thinking I could use it, but really it barely works, and it's not the hot glue anyway. It's just the mini glue gun that doesn't get very warm or very hot, but I try. And actually using that Tight Bond on there really worked, so I've not had any problems with it. And I'm keeping this one for me. It won't be sold. This one's just a prototype for others that I plan to make and sell in my booths, as well as a festival that I'm doing in early September. So I'm just making alterations, trimming down the brim of a hat, and I'm going to end up leaving it to dry overnight, and then I'll work on it again the next day. Next day, I decide to spray paint it This is oil rubbed bronze, but any black or dark color paint like that would work. I even had a gray primer that I started to use, but since I had the black or oil rubbed bronze, I decided to go ahead and use it. Here I'm cutting down the styrofoam that I'm going to use to place up in the top of the cone, because I'll be putting a stick in to hold this topiary up, and I wanted to apply that styrofoam so that that would make that more secure. I'm going to be using dried grass that I get in bags from the Dollar Tree. So it took almost one whole bag, but this is just some that I had dumped out. There's some good green grass in there as well, but I end up using mostly the dried grass because it being a witch's hat, it seemed to be more appropriate than having that fresh, bright, greener grass. But I had planned on using a brush-on glue like Elmer's or my Gorilla Glue, but I had this adhesive spray and I thought, well, let me try that and see how it works. And let me tell you, it was so much better because this stuff is really sticky. So I just started pulling off bits and pieces of the dried grass and just sticking it on there, and it was adhering really well. So I just work on that until I get the entire hat covered, including the bottom of the brim of I am gluing around the edges of the styrofoam that I'm going to put up inside the hat, and so that it will hold in there securely once it's dried. And I went ahead and inserted the stick in there as well. I put glue with the stick as I put it into the styrofoam. Sorry, I got some of this off camera. And here's the container that I'll put it in. I kind of jumped ahead of myself and went ahead and I put, first of all, it's a lightweight metal container that came from the Dollar Tree. You can pick these up still at the Dollar Tree, or you can grab them at yard sales or thrift stores. They're out there in abundance. And they're lightweight, so I put gravel in the bottom before putting in the styrofoam. This is where I really jumped ahead of myself by putting all that in the pot before I even had it painted, and also painting in this mess of all that dried grass on my desk. But anyway, it worked out. I didn't want this to be pristine anyway, and I wanted it grungy. In fact, I'm getting ready to sprinkle some cinnamon on it to give it a rusty look and a little bit of a grungy look, because, you know, it's a witch's hat and it is supposed to be grungy. But if you don't like that, you don't have to do it. And next I'm adding the dried grass to the top of the styrofoam all around the top of the pot, and just covering it all up with the grass. I absolutely love how easy this project was and how cute it turned out. Let me know in the comments what you think. Next project is a makeover for this pumpkin, which isn't too bad to start with. It is a little dull looking though, and although it's very realistic looking, I thought it could use a nice little makeover. So I pull out the sunflower mold by IOD, and this is a mold that I didn't think I would use a whole lot, or that I would like it a whole lot, but I ordered it because I know that people like sunflowers, and so I have used it so much, and probably more than any of my molds at this point. But I'm just brushing it with cornstarch and then opening up my air dry clay, breaking off a piece and rolling it in my hand to make it more pliable, and then I just start pressing it into the mold. And IOD molds have this rim around each design, and it makes it really easy just to get a nice crisp finish along the edge of the casting. I keep my air dry clay in the package that it comes in and just keep wrapping it back up, but I store it in double plastic bags. Then I also put one sheet of wet wipe in there. I haven't had any problems with it causing mold or anything, and it provides just enough moisture to help prolong the life of the air dry clay. You want to make sure you get the clay pressed in there really, really well, and there I am just going around and cleaning up those edges. But I pulled out my brayer and rolled it across to press it in as much as I could. When you're ready to unmold, you just flip it over and gravity should do the job and it should release very easily. But make sure you've used that cornstarch prior to putting the clay in the mold, because that really helps the release. Now I'm just making a hole in the center part because I'm going to fit this casting on the top of the pumpkin. I'm using my Titebond Quick and Thick to spread along the back. You want to make sure that every piece, especially all of those edges, are covered well with the glue so that you have good adhesion. And then I'm just going around pressing it in very lightly. You want to make sure that you have good contact between the casting and the pumpkin itself. And I'm just using my fingers and a paintbrush and also my X-Acto knife just to go around and clean up the edges where there are little extra pieces of clay that came out with the mold, and also to wipe up any of the glue that seeps out from underneath, and just making sure that there's good adhesion all the way around. This is my first time actually painting the sunflower in realistic colors, and I was a little bit apprehensive about it, a little bit nervous about doing it, and wondering whether I would be able to do a good job in giving it dimension and choosing the right colors to look more realistic than the monotone finish that I've been doing with this mold. And here's an example, and that was actually the first thing that I ever did using the sunflower mold. I'm using Rust-Oleum milk paint in the color Venetian yellow. I love this paint, and while it's still wet, I pull out a lighter color of Waverly paint in yellow. It's a more mellow shade of yellow. I can't remember the name of it, but while the first coat is still wet, then I use that lighter yellow, and now I'm adding some brown to the center. I think this color is nutmeg, but any brown will do, because I'm going to then come back over it in a black paint. And again, I'm doing all this while the first coat is still wet so that the colors blend together. Next, I mix just a dab of the brown and the black together, and then just very lightly start along the edge of the center where it's painted brown and just pull that paint down each of the petals, just giving more dimension to this sunflower. And I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. I will be applying a dark wax on top of this as well, so that's going to help show off the dimensions of and the beautiful details of this beautiful sunflower. I forgot to mention that I have done all of this painting on the sunflower while the air dry clay is still wet. You can do this, and typically it cuts down on any cracking, but next morning after I came in to check my sunflower after it had dried overnight, you can see there was some cracking. That's where those white spaces are along the center part and down some of the petals. I don't know what caused it to happen. Maybe that air dry clay is a little old. I have had it for a while, but what I'm doing to fill in those cracks is I pulled out that Venetian yellow and just very heavily am going around where the cracks are. And what I'll have to do is also come back and add the lighter colors and basically do those first three paint steps all over again, and hopefully that will work. But next day I come in and check the sunflower. It had not filled in the cracks. So I took out some spackle. It took me a minute to think of that. I took out the spackle and just pushed some of it down along those cracks, and what you see me doing now while the crackle is still wet, I am using my brush and I get it a little wet so that I can dig out that crackle, the excess of the crackle, and then just brushing it out so that it's not gobbed on there and it doesn't hide those details. And as I mentioned earlier, I go through all the steps again of painting this sunflower. So I'll skip right on to giving the pumpkin a fresh coat of paint. This is folk art paint. I don't remember the color. It may be called pumpkin. I think actually it is. But I just give it a couple of coats all the way, all over the exposed part of the pumpkin. And I kind of like it. I didn't want to get anything too bright, and this may be a little bright, but I knew that I was going to put a dark wax, well, an antiquing wax over top, so it turned out fine. After both coats of the orange has dried, I then apply one coat of Waverly's clear wax, and I'm doing that so that when I apply the antique wax, it will be easier for me to wipe back, because if you apply darker wax over top of your painted project, it clings to the paint and leaves a darker finish. But if you start with the clear wax, then you've got that buffer between the paint and the dark wax, and it's just easier to wipe back the wax and leave it more in the details rather than on the top surface of whatever you're working on. I'm going to spritz some water in with that little bit of antique wax to water it down, and that will help even more to be able to get a lighter antiquing on this pumpkin. I wanted the antiquing, but I didn't want it to overpower the sunflower. After wiping as much of the wax back as I could with my shop towel, I then got out a wet wipe and was able to take off even more of it. And I use a clean brush to go in some of the detailed areas where some of the wax had pulled a little bit, and was able to pull that out and wipe that off. And so here we go. It's now I'm covering up some of the, I guess where maybe, I'm not sure why I got those little white spots after pulling back. I guess maybe the wipe pulled back some of that paint and left me a few white spots. So I got my black and brown out and dabbed that in and filled those areas back in. And here it is. Tell me what you think. And let me say here just how much I appreciate each and every one of you. If you are returning to this channel, I appreciate that you are coming back, and that tells me that you find value in what I'm doing. If you're new, I'm so glad that you landed here, and I hope that you'll return as well. But regardless, I appreciate all of you so, so much. And if you wouldn't care, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. I always love to hear from the viewers. I always try to answer. It may not be the exact same day, but I always try to get back, and I so enjoy reading and talking with you all. So please leave me a comment. This next project is also using the IOD sunflower mold and air dry clay. So I'm going to skip over that part and go directly to the application part. I thrifted this rectangular basket a few months ago specifically for this purpose. I wanted to put a sunflower casting on this mold, on this basket, and I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to place all the castings, but I ended up doing both sides. Originally I was only going to do one side as a front, but the weight of the air dry clay kind of made the basket lean a little toward that side, and to get it to sit more flat, I decided to put castings on the back as well. So I'm just going to speed through this and then jump straight to the paint, since you've seen that process already. After I have all the castings placed on the basket, I pull out my white paint and start going over all of the castings with the linen white from Rust-Oleum. And as I mentioned earlier, I was doing that hoping that it would prevent cracking. It always has before. I really do think that my air dry clay is a little old, because this also cracked, and I also was painting it in white because, I don't know, I knew that the finish that I wanted to do with this basket, but for some reason what was stuck in my mind was the way I did the first basket that I had shown earlier in this video. Anyway, as it turns out, next day I had the same cracking on this project as I did the one that you just saw. Actually, I had worked on these all at the same time, so it was the same night that I left both of them to dry. I hadn't seen that didn't work in the first one. These cracks were too large for that, but it did help quite a bit more with this one. I left it to dry and then came back to it and ended up putting the plaster on this one as well, and doing the same technique of using my brush to thin out the plaster, pull out the plaster, and smooth it down and remove the globby parts. And in the process of working on these cracks, I realized, well, wait a minute, this white paint is really not what I want to be putting on here anyway, because I was planning to use a taupe colored paint and then put a black wax over top of that. So let's jump ahead to the paint with the new color. Because there's no detail painting with this part goes so much faster and is a really fast and easy project to finish after you have made all of your castings and applied them to the basket. That takes more time than anything else for this project, and that goes fairly fast, especially once you get used to working with air dry clay. I paint all four sides and the bottom in the sandstone paint. I also do the inner lip of the band that goes around the top edge of the basket, but I leave the inside of the basket in its natural color. After that paint had dried, I applied a coat of clear wax to all those same surfaces, because as I mentioned, I'm going to put a black wax over top. And again, I wanted to be able to remove as much of that as possible. So I used the mineral spirits the same way that I did earlier in the decoupage project. I didn't need to do it because of having fine line crackle, because I don't use it here, but I did it just to thin it out, to thin out the wax, so that I have a lighter hand in putting the wax on. I didn't want a really dark finish on this. I just wanted to highlight the details. I wanted that dark wax, but I didn't want it to be super dark. So the mineral spirits really help with thinning your wax out if you need to do that. After getting as much of that black wax off as possible with my shop towel, then I pull out a wet wipe and continue to remove some of that black wax to achieve the look that I was going for. And here it is. I finished this at night, so I did not get good pictures of this finish, but I did take this little video. Sorry about the shadow there on it, but again, I'm down in my workshop in the basement. It was late at night. I just wanted to get this finished and get this video finished for you all. So next project is another one of my favorites. I think I really must be very partial to witches, because this is the second out of 3 witch projects. I had thrifted this frame sometime back. I actually thought it was the old-fashioned gold medal. It turns out it is wood and it's painted. So it was loose in a couple of corners, so I added some Titebond glue and taped it down to pull those together. And next day I came in after that had dried overnight, and I had already washed the glass in this frame. It was pretty dirty, so I gave it a good wash with alcohol. And the print that I'm going to put in here, I had ordered from Temu sometime back, and I think it was last spring, or maybe even farther back than that. And it was past Halloween last year, I know that much, because I ended up just keeping it in my stash and pulling it out when I was getting other things out. I had actually forgotten that I had it, but then I realized, oh, I have the perfect frame for this, and it really did turn out perfect. And really all that I have to do is decoupage the print. It's a canvas print onto this heavy piece of cardstock that was actually in a mailer that I got. And I found that the for some reason it wasn't working that well with the decoupage medium, so I pulled out that adhesive spray, and that really helped. After all that had dried, then I just took my scissors and cut out the cardstock around the edges of the print and just added it to the frame. And then I add some black wax to the frame itself, and then I go over the top of that black wax with Rub and Buff. Sorry about the glare from that ring light, but I hope that you can see enough of this to decide whether you like it or not. I really think it turned out cute, and I do think that this frame was perfect for it. But let me know what you think, and tell me, do you like to decorate for Halloween? This next project is one that I'm making over. I actually made this pumpkin I think 2 years ago, maybe even 3. And that is a vinyl tile, I guess is the best thing to call it, from the Dollar Tree. If you shop at Dollar Tree, and especially if you shop for crafts at Dollar Tree, I'm sure you've seen it before. But I cut the pumpkin out of wood. Actually, it was strips of wood. There are 3 strips, I think, of wood that make up this pumpkin, and then I cut the shape out. And I had just painted the pumpkin white, and I had used some twine and stuff around the top, but it hadn't sold in my shop last year, and so I wanted to give it a new look. And I decided to pull out this gorgeous paint that I love so much, the Rust-Oleum Venetian Yellow, and give it a good coat, or 2 coats actually, of the Venetian Yellow. I did put a coat on the back, but I didn't put full coverage on the back because I want it to look nice, but it is going to be the back and it won't be seen. So I did just do a light coat on the back. But anyway, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, and as I was working on it, it just all kind of took place. What I decided to do was an IOD mold. Again, this time it is the, I think it's called Autumn Harvest, maybe. I'm not real sure. I have had it since last year, but this is the first time that I'm using it, and I decided just to use the leaves on it. I wasn't sure if that would be too much on top of that patterned design, but I just decided to go with it. And so I got all those on there, and I wanted it to kind of have the effect of leaves falling to the ground. So that's why I positioned them as I have, and I decide to paint them green. And this is the color Moss from Waverly. My camera died while I was working on this, so I didn't get all the steps, but I painted the leaves green, then I apply the clear wax, and then I apply the Waverly Antiquing wax and wipe that back, and this is the finish that I got. I kind of like it. Oh, and I added some Spanish moss at the top. Our next project is super, super easy. I thrifted this a couple of months ago, put it up for fall, and wasn't sure what I would do, and then it dawned on me the other day when I glanced at it, I'm going to cover that copper color in Rub and Buff, gold Rub and Buff. And I typically like copper, but this was kind of, I don't know, I just didn't like this color. I think I like the shinier, brighter copper better. So I just put the Rub and Buff, squeeze some out there and use that sponge brush, which I see people using these all the time, but they come apart when I use them. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I was able to get finished with the whole thing, and I just put the Rub and Buff all over, as well as the sprout, which is that twisted wire, and the stem, which is a heavier wire, and then the leaf, all of it got some gold Rub and Buff, and then I was finished. Tell me what you think. I think this is really going to look nice with a candle in it, because it is open at the bottom to put a candle in. Earlier in the video, when I was making the topiary witch hat, I said that was probably my favorite. Well, I hadn't gotten to this yet. This is actually two different projects that I'm doing, and it is making, I don't even know what to call it, kind of maybe primitive Halloween art. I don't know. I just saw some pictures on Pinterest and decided to try it myself. So I've taken a styrofoam ball and I'm just decoupaging some plain white tissue paper. That's actually the backing off of some of my napkins that I've used for decoupaging, and never throw those away. In order to cover up that styrofoam, I'm putting a few layers, two I think, of the tissue paper, and using Mod Podge. And then when I get finished with that, I start using air dry clay to start adding facial features. I guess this is kind of a mix between primitive Halloween art and the vintage pumpkins or vintage jack-o'-lantern art. That's kind of what my inspiration is as well. So anyway, this is first time doing this. I'm not at all used to using air dry clay for sculpting anything, which I guess sculpting is a big word to use for what I'm doing, but I just pinch off pieces. Here I'm making the eye sockets and use my fingers to press in for the eye sockets. So that's the eyes, and then pressed in for the eye sockets, and then I put on a nose and then the mouth. And using Titebond glue, it adheres really quickly, which is great because I can just keep moving. And these are so fun to make. And here I'm just shaping a mouth, and then I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to kind of make indentions along the lips, because this is going to be like a zombie where the mouth is stitched up. That's what this is going to look like. So when I get that finished, then I add a coat of paint, and really hadn't planned on doing more than this one to include in this video, but I don't know, I just was bitten by the bug and just kept going. So while that was drying, I decided to make a witch, and instead of doing each separate facial element, I used a bigger piece of clay and mashed it flat, and then fit it over the front side to make the face. And here I am shaping out a pointy chin, and I just keep playing along with it until I get all these different features added that I thought would look nice for a witch. I did use one picture to kind of go off of or get some ideas from. This is something that really anybody can do. I have never done anything like this before, and the supplies are not very expensive. So, if you mess up, if you're not happy with it, then you're not losing a lot of money or anything like that. So, I just keep using the air dry clay to shape out some of the facial elements and gluing them on, and then I also use my X-Acto knife to kind of make some wrinkles in the forehead and things like that, and also to shape the lips that I'm going to give her. And I decide to add. uh, I have to laugh. I laughed so hard when I did this. She gets a couple of moles on her face. One is going to be at the corner of her nose. The other is going to be on her chin. And she's a witch, and she's in her prime, so she gets a hair coming out of her mole on her chin. So watch for that. She's going to get a coat of green paint. This is Moss by Waverly, and I mix it in with a little bit of black and just give her a good coat all over, and then leave her to dry. Then I worked on painting her hat. I made the hat off camera. I used the same steps that I used to make the larger one for the topiary, only I didn't add the grass. I'm just painting this one black, and then while the paint is still wet, I age it up by sprinkling some cinnamon. And that's it for the hat. It turned out so cute, if I say so myself. I leave all those overnight to dry and come back the next day and get started painting her face on. And I'm not going to describe everything. You can easily see what I'm doing. I'm just going to speed it up and get to the finish. she's going to live on this stick, so I put some glue in there and had already made the hole so that the stick would go in through that decoupage, which had kind of gotten hard. So now I'm adding her hat, and she's finished. Let me know what you think about her, and tell me, is this a project that you would enjoy making, and how would you use her? I can see her being used in wreaths, in floral arrangements, or maybe even just sticking up out of a canister or something, maybe with several others. But how would you use her? Well, I'm finally finished, and this has been definitely a labor of love. The work itself I'm just so passionate about doing this. I love my art, but doing the video, wow, it takes forever, and that's why I'm usually a day late or even more. And that's why I wanted to make this one chock full of different projects, so to kind of make up for not having put many videos out in the last month. So I hope you've enjoyed everything. I really do enjoy doing this and sharing it with you all. I hope you've been inspired, and please let me know which project you like best. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.